I mean, who would have thought like this week was so full of crap that like David Stringer is not even going to make the show?
Yeah, that's not even top 10.
That's not top 10.
I'm Arizona Family political editor Dennis Welch.
Dennis, fake news Welch. Try to tell the truth.
And this is the Politics Unplugged podcast.
Dennis, if you have a problem with substance abuse, I am more than willing to talk to you anytime you need.
All right, welcome back to another edition of Politics Unplugged, the podcast. And today I am joined by Don Penich-Thacker and Wes Gullett. Wes Gullett, it's your first time on the pod.
I'm very
Welcome.
excited.
I know, you were
very
telling me you were so
excited.
super.
I feel a little bit like relegation, but that's okay.
No. This isn't soccer, sir. So it's a lot more relaxed here in the pod than it is on the TV. So, like, you know, as we were talking last week, and I told you before the show, you can swear. You can say it.
So exciting.
But don't celebrate it.
My mother gave me an admonition about that. So I'll keep it clean.
All right, man, we've got a ton to go through, like just a ton of things that happened this week. But let's start. Biggest story out of Arizona politics, Kyrsten Sinema quits the Senate and basically tells everybody, you know, it's not me, it's you. It's the reason I'm quitting. First of all, let's start at the beginning here. She gets elected in 2018. I would never have thought that she would be a one-termer. How did we get here? Start with you, Don.
Oh, gosh. Well, I will tell you that one thing that I think a lot of people were listening for in that speech was whether she was going to leave any breadcrumbs or kind of signals about what she's doing next. And I think that, as you referenced, she made it crystal clear that she is never seeking another vote from the American public, and that is not, you know, kind of an audience that she is any longer interested in catering to. But yeah, I think that no one in the beginning of her run for this seat would have predicted that she wasn't going to become, you know, the next McCain of a long legacy of Senate leadership and rogue, you know, but smart policy making. But I think that there's some truth to what she said, that her personal priorities really started. And I know a lot of people on the left who feel like her priorities were not in line even in that last win as a Democrat, that she was already at odds with the party and the main values, and that has been a sometimes gradual, sometimes quick, continued evolution that now has resulted in the end of a career that no one saw coming, even as there have been difficulties and tensions over the last several years.
Yeah, and what's your take on this? How'd she get so sideways with the base that sent her there?
It's crazy to me because I remember when when the Democrat Party was too conservative for her. So back a long time ago,
That was a long time ago.
I'm old enough to remember a lot of things.
You're going back to the Green Party days.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so the idea that she became too conservative for the Democrat Party is just mind-numbing to me. And having worked for somebody who was at odds with the party a lot, for a lot of years with McCain, I remember how hard those district meetings were and how hard talking to all those people. And I had to go many times to those meetings, and it wasn't pleasant. But, you know, John was like, I'm never quitting the party. And I think if Kyrsten would have stayed with the party, she'd be running for re-election right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And she would be in a primary, but I don't know that Rubin would have primaried her. Somebody would have, but she would have ended up winning because she would have had the money and the ability to do it. So this move to independent just put her on an island.
And, you know, I mean, there's so much to talk about with her. And this, how is that message? Let's get back to the message, the video message out there. How's that being received in the political world? You know, because, again, it was kind of, you know, blaming the public, saying that they don't want her brand of bipartisanship, or they don't want that anymore. How's that being received?
I mean, I'm hearing a lot of kind of good riddance. Like, this is a good example of exactly what we didn't like about you and the way you regard us as your constituents, the way you look at this process. It was kind of a microcosmic exemplification, of a lot of the problems that people have with her. But I also know it is also clear now that this wasn't a decision she had made a while back and was just holding secret. I think that is very clear. And it's also very clear that this wasn't a decision that she came to glibly or, with excitement for the next stage. I think there's a lot of sadness in her and her camp over having come to this decision. But the response that I'm hearing the most is, yeah, well, you made your bed. Now go lie in it and get out of our lives. Yeah.
And moving forward, I mean, how does this impact the Senate race? I mean, we're not going to see the three-way race. It looks like now it's likely going to be Ruben Gallego versus Kari Lake in the general election. Kyrsten still has, I assume, some small base of support out there. And, that you saw immediately afterwards, Ruben Gallego and Kari Lake were both tweeting nice things about Sinema, ostensibly in an effort to maybe pick up some of the Sinema voters that are out there. Who could win those votes, Wes?
Well, I mean, that's good. That's the $85 million question right there. Yeah. Because that's how much is going to be spent on this race. So.
Conservatively, 85, 90, más o menos.
Yeah. And I don't think Sinema's shelf life is very long in terms of her endorsement meaning something for somebody. I think she would have done really well in a three-way race, better than expected. The math was not adding up to a victory. That had to be the calculation. But she would have definitely been the spoiler for probably for Lake. And so I think Lake is the one who's probably celebrating. And, Kari, Mother of Dragons Lake, is...
oh, boy.
I am sure
I'm going to get emails on that. Thanks, Wes. Well, can I forward them on to you?
Yeah, go ahead. Please do. My email address is wes@wesgullett.com. Man
who stands by his trash talk.
If you need to reach out directly. It's going to be a battle for the middle and who can do that, and you've got two candidates who are going to struggle with that. It's hard to talk, and it's hard to position yourself in this environment as bipartisan without people rolling their eyes and saying, "Come on." So a lot of it.
Well, people want bipartisanship, but their definition of bipartisanship is that I get everything I want, which isn't bipartisanship.
Well, what people want when they think about bipartisanship is they want to get stuff done. They want to move. They want to not have to worry about the fiscal cliff and that every 2 months we're going to shut down the government, and they want their 401k to keep growing and not be up and down and worry about that, and they want inflation to be less, and they want all those things.
They want to control the border until somebody offers them control of the border, and one guy says we need that.
But do we really?
I actually see that differently. I think that this helps Ruben, and all the polling has kind of suggested that that's the way it would go, and I think that his camp, Gallego, is feeling very good now, and I don't know that we'll ever know the one-day fundraising totals, but I bet you they are sky high for him. And something that he has, interestingly, he has the ability to achieve that I think Lake does not, is that he gets an opportunity to be defining himself for an Arizona that many of whom don't know him. Kari has given herself some notoriety and some infamy that she's going to have a much harder time pivoting off of if she even ever becomes interested, which I don't believe that she will. Gallego is more of a blank slate. He has the future ahead of him to introduce himself as exactly this moderate, get things done candidate.
Except for his record in Congress, which is, and
people have short memories.
But they're not with $85 million. So
they will remind them of everything.
Right. And so you've got to do it. You've got to do the outreach, and you've got to, and if it's a national, when it comes down to a national decision, you know, who's going to control the Senate, Republicans are going to come back to the Republican if they're that worried about it. So you've got, even if it's Carrie Lake, and even if she is what she is, we know what she is, but she's a Republican and she's got an R behind her name. So it's going to be interesting to see how independents feel about whether they want Republican control or Democrat control of the United States Senate, because it'll come down to that, not with the names.
Well, I think bringing up the defining characteristics of the candidates is a good way to pivot to the lawsuit. This past week, the Supreme Court rejected Lake's effort to have this defamation lawsuit that was filed by Maricopa County Recorder Stephen Richard. They tried to get it dismissed. The Supreme Court said, "No, we're moving forward. We're going through with discovery." This could have a big impact on this race if we start getting more information about how decisions were made in the Carrie Lake camp during the 2022 election that she claimed was stolen. There's no proof of that. She's lost all her lawsuits claiming it was rigged and whatnot. But this could have a big impact, this defamation case, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this ensures that for probably the majority of this year, this calendar year and election cycle, that we'll have a constant drip of headlines about Carrie Lake lost another case. They're going into discovery and finding out this and that. Or alternatively, her camp could choose to settle, which is also not good for her campaign, because Richard has said that the only settlement that he would take in lieu of continued legal proceedings is one where she admits exactly that everything she has said was not true and that it never happened, and they're not going to do that. So either way, it's not good for her. Yeah,
and what is the path to victory for Carrie Lake, your favorite candidate?
Well, like I said, Republicans have to not realize, think about who they're voting for. It's challenging, and this lawsuit, is a problem, and Stephen's going to pursue it, and it's going to, because he wants to prove the truth, and so it's going to be. It's you line up all the problems, and there are a lot, but look at it, they're less than Donald Trump's.
This is true.
Oh, Lord.
So, and he's the front runner, and he's winning the election, and he's winning Arizona by 5 or 6 right now.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't worry everybody, the idea that Lake's mini Trump, but Trump's winning, so she ties herself to Trump. That's her path to victory. And if people in Arizona are dumb enough to provide our 11 electoral college votes for Donald Trump, then it's a problem. And I'm the Republican.
I would like to remind everyone that that's the Republican speaking.
That is the Republican speaking. You're an elected Republican precinct committee member, even.
Yeah, I'm probably not after this. They've got my email address. So.
You doxed yourself, sir.
I can always eliminate that one. It's just my name.
All right, let's pivot now. Bringing up some of the national stuff. What did we learn from Super Tuesday? Not much, I don't think. Everything went kind of expected, but we do have a PPE election coming up in Arizona. What, if anything, is possible to be learned or gleaned from our version of the presidential primary?
Well, Nikki Haley won Vermont.
And?
Oh, Lord.
What? Somewhere else. She had a 2.
Didn't somebody win Guam or something like that?
I remember in 2000 we won Massachusetts and no one knew it on Super Tuesday.
I think that, I don't know, maybe this is just political nerdiness, but I'm interested to see how many people even return ballots in that one, because I think maybe that might be a signal of whether we can get enthusiasm going. And it's really not the best signal, because between now and the real vote, there will be lots of other stuff, pissing people off and gearing them up. But I'm interested to see how many people just leave the ballot on the counter and don't even worry about it.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of excitement though for Joe Biden on that side with Democrats right now. That leads me to ask you about the State of the Union speech. This was a big speech for him. It seemed like there was a lot of energy in the House the other night when he delivered that speech. And Wes, how did he do? I think one of the big things he had to clear, the big hurdle he had to clear, was basically on style points. With everybody looking at Joe Biden and talking about his age and whether he's capable to do the job, they wanted to look and see how he delivered it. Did he do a good job?
I thought he was fired up, and Biden can spin it up. And he did last night for that reason. How would you like to have been one of the Supreme Court members sitting there during that awkward part? And unfortunately,
and they never clap though. They never clap for anything.
He did step on his line, but they were squirming a little bit. I was watching them. They were squirming a little bit, and so I think that I think he got an A- B+.
All right, yeah, and what was your take on State of the Union? And do you think this is going to get Democrats more excited here for the president? I mean, obviously, Arizona is one of the keys to the White House. So
Yeah, no, I think that there were a lot of Democrats who were relieved first and foremost because it was tense. We weren't sure what we were going to see. So relief. And then actually, he didn't just do okay. He did well. Like there was fire there was strength, there was, quick-wittedness, the kind of thing that we think of from, Joe Biden over the years. And so I think he did a great job. I know a lot of Democrats were very pleased. That was a speech for the base, perhaps more so than a State of the Union. And it worked. I know a lot of Democrats today are much more fired up than they have been in 3 years.
Well, and speaking of what we saw, what the hell did we watch with the rebuttal on the State of the Union? It was if you missed it, I don't know where you've been. It was Alabama Senator Kate. Forget her last name. No one's helping me out on this one. Colin Briggs. Yeah, there we go. So it was. That was one of the strangest things I've ever seen in politics. What was your take?
Yeah, it was uncomfortable to watch. I read about it, and it sounded better on paper. But it was weird, the whole, and we were talking about this earlier, and it's unfortunate on International Women's Day that the Republicans put the woman in the kitchen. So that I think but that's what we're trying to do is show that we're everyday people, and the Republican Party has changed dramatically, and it's clearly trying to do a rebrand.
Yeah, well, the rebrand of what though? I mean, if you didn't see it, she was literally in the kitchen giving this very strange, theatrical, but poorly I don't even know how to describe it. Go watch it, but she's literally in the kitchen. That can't appeal to women.
No, and in the larger context of women's issues like IVF and reproductive rights, being forefront of everyone's mind, for that to be the choice just seems completely out of check with what people care about. And, women's issue, these reproductive rights issues that we're hearing and seeing in the headlines every single day, multiple times a day right now, that is across the political spectrum. This is not something that, Republicans would have liked to see that. They don't want IVF and reproductive freedom. No, that is inaccurate. This is something that women of all parties are interested in. So just a really weird choice, which, hey, make yourselves look silly. It's fine for me.
And speaking of another great segue, thank you very much, because abortion, that issue is very much playing out big time in Arizona. We got the Vice President, Kamala Harris. She's in town. She is speaking about these issues. The legislature we saw recently urging people not to sign the Arizona Access to Abortion Act. And then you've got, I don't know, did you guys see what Sonny Borelli said?
Yeah.
If you missed this, you had Republican Senator Borelli after a speech, that Katie Hobbs gave, talking about how they need to pass legislation that enshrines the access to abortion.
To contraceptives.
To contraception.
Just birth control.
Just birth control. And Sonny Borelli says, well, women should just put an aspirin between their knees? What?
And this is his second time trotting out this joke, quotation marks joke, whatever. Yeah, it just, I don't know. Maybe you can explain your
what is going on? This can't be a winning strategy for a Republican Party because abortion, contraception, it polls pretty well. Wes.
Poor Wes.
Don't get silent on me now, man.
He's like, let's talk about
I work with all women. I live with all women. I have 3 daughters. I have, my wife. And, I agree with them. So I'm not, and so, I don't know that Sonny Borelli, his comments are helpful. I don't think they're helpful.
Well, I just think the opposition to these kinds of issues is going to play a major factor in everything in politics in Arizona, from the presidential race all the way down to which party controls the legislature.
Right, but you can't win the majority if you don't run enough candidates, and so we're going to have a Republican House of Representatives no matter what happens next year, because there's just not enough Democrat candidates to take the majority in the districts that they need to. And so when we wake up on Election Day, Joe Biden may be reelected president, and the Senate, U.S. Senate, may be under Democrat control, but the Arizona legislature, is going to, at best, be a 15-15 split in the Senate and a majority in the House. And people are going to be like, how did that happen? Well,
we'll be asking you, like, how did that happen? Come mid-November or whenever the election is wrapped up. Sonny was brilliant.
Oh boy!
And he's going to get reelected.
We were all playing checkers, and he was playing chess. Damn it! Good God! All right.
He's not going to get reelected.
I think we do got to kind of wrap this up here because we're all on deadlines now. But I want to wrap up with one other thing. I'm extremely fascinated with these county races right now, and I want to ask Don, as a Democrat here at the table, what's the reception right now with the party where you have like 3 or 4 sheriff's candidates who all used to be Republicans, like a few weeks ago or a few months ago? Like, what's the reaction right now to that?
Now this is my turn to be silent.
Oh
and
boy!
Stare sheepishly at the wall. No, candidate recruitment is something that the Arizona Democratic Party has been working on, struggling with for a handful of years now, and especially for some of these, like county recorder, county attorney, county sheriff. Positions like that are tougher to fill. And so when Democrats are already working with a shallow pool of candidates interested, and then for those types of jobs, which people don't normally think of Democrats for necessarily, then it's a challenge. It's something that Democrats are continuing to work on. The new party chair at the state level is certainly working on it. But yeah, I mean, that's the reality of where we're at. And some of the candidates are making vows about like being in line with Democratic values now. So we'll see, but those are our choices.
Can you do that in 2024? Switch like that? Just be that brazen to switch from Republican to Democrat, and you're not going you can get away with that, Wes?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, how's it done?
Well, Tom O'Halloran was elected Republican who served in Congress as a Democrat.
Very different time, though.
It was only a couple years ago.
A very different time. It really has been,
but
man.
I don't see a big primary. I mean, the primary for sheriff is going to be who is less Republican. And that's going to be the Democrat primary, and it's going to be a battle for that. And you've got you've got some newcomers like this guy Tyler Kemp, who's going to be interesting, and the Democrat Party is going to get to pick, it's a head scratcher.
All right, we're gonna have to end it right there. Thank you both for joining me this week. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And welcome back to the second half of the podcast. I'm joined with Colin, as always. Thank you for sticking around, man. My brain froze on the Alabama Center, so thanks for bailing me out on that one.
Sure, glad I could help.
But let's get your thoughts, man. Let's talk a little bit about the Kyrsten Sinema like breaking up with the electorate this week. Going, I'm sorry, it's totally you and not me. Because I thought I get what she was trying to communicate, acknowledging that, the voters just aren't buying what she's selling. But it really did come off as just that, as almost, blaming the Senate, or as, there was one GIF something that made its way on social media. Somebody was making a joke that says, Sinema, leaves Senate, blames America.
Yeah. And that's what she did. Mm-hmm. She made it clear that, I listen to people and I'm civil, and therefore you just won't vote for me. Mm-hmm. So I have to leave. Mm-hmm. And I saw that and thought, how tone deaf can you possibly be? Mm-hmm. I don't want to be lectured about civility by someone who tweets out her F off ring.
Yeah.
Unless the civility was the curtsy. When she gave the thumbs down while voting against the minimum wage increase.
Yeah.
And the, I'm a listener. Tell that to her constituents.
Yeah.
Because the one complaint I saw about her over and over and over is she's never here. She never talks to anyone. And if you call her office, it's just going to ring. You don't get a person. You don't get anything.
Yeah. I mean, we get the emails.
Yeah.
Whether they're how accurate they are or not, it's not like I'm calling up, personally calling up her constituent services and, whatever, but we get those emails.
Yeah.
And in this world, I mean, all politics has been nationalized now, and symbolism matters a lot. Sinema did have a record of accomplishments to run on, but you bring up the curtsy on the minimum wage vote with the thumbs down. You bring up the F offering, which we're on the podcast, the fuck offering.
Yeah.
Things like that. That didn't help.
No.
And when it did come to certain issues, I mean, the filibuster.
Yes.
Her insistence on keeping the filibuster. And she, at the time, if I remember right, she was making the argument like, why is everybody so worked up over this rule of the Senate? I want to preserve the tradition of this and that and everything. But I think a lot of voters immediately saw right through it, because they were she wanted to preserve the filibuster when Joe Biden, at the time, her Democratic president, was trying to push through voting protections.
Yes. To prioritize Senate tradition over voting protections rubbed people the wrong way.
I know.
Go figure.
Go figure.
And like the curtsy when you downvote something is one thing. It was the minimum wage, which was something she had championed. She ran on a campaign and a political background of championing that sort of thing. And to do this sort of smirking thumbs down curtsy.
Yeah.
I mean, what is that?
Yeah, and if for listeners that aren't familiar with the backstory on some of this stuff, you were in the middle of all of this. Remember, her people were calling, us and telling us it's not a curtsy. It's not a curtsy. They were like they would get really worked up on that, and I just don't understand. I don't everything like that. Working with Sinema and her folks was like this.
Yes.
Everything was like 0 to 100 like that.
Yes, and if you don't want it reported that she curtsied, tell her not to curtsy.
Yes,
because I know what a goddamn curtsy is, and that was a curtsy. The staff may not know, but if you want to see what a curtsy looks like, that's what that looks like. That was a curtsy.
Yeah.
While giving the big dramatic thumbs down.
Yeah. That in plain English, what was that?
Yes.
Fucking curtsy.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I can't celebrate that either. So, and the other thing I wanted to chat real quick too is, there was some video of Sinema leaving the Senate later that day after she released her, farewell video. And her staff, to the joy of Kyrsten Sinema, was mocking the press that was outside there.
Yes, staff are going blah, 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 while she sort of giggles.
Somebody asks, do you have anything more to say about your retirement? And her staff, and I believe it was her spokesperson, was like, blah, 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 blah. And then you hear this laugh, this guffaw from Sinema. And I was like, how classless is that?
Yes.
Just walking away, just I'm better than this and better than you, and how dare you ask me that?
And this sort of notion that she's like tired of all this and above all this, you never talk to anyone.
No,
I mean, it's not like she's sick of always having to answer questions. She never answers anything.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the thing. I think people felt like with her behavior was that she thought of herself as, whether it's true or not, that she was better than them. It was above all this.
Yes. And almost immediately gave the impression to a lot of people that once she got elected, that was it. It was mission accomplished. And now what we voted for is not what we're getting.
Yeah. And back to that thing, with the mocking of the reporters, that was just so classless. It's the essence of, like, you ever been hanging out with somebody and they're just berating like a staffer or bartender who doesn't deserve it.
Yeah.
It's just because they're doing that because they can.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
She's been around long enough to know that those reporters are there because their bosses wanted them there.
Yes.
And that this was a news story. And she understands the news as well as anybody in the nation's capital. And for her just to mock was just, again, a classless exit.
Yes. Yeah. It's been a strange period watching her in office, because it does not seem to be the person people knew, at least politically. Yeah. Leading up to her election.
It was the example of, I forget what the movie was, like, stop trying to make fetch happen. Like, she just kept it at bipartisanship. It's everything's bipartisanship. It's like, stop trying to make that happen. They're not opposing you because of that. They're opposing you because of some of the policies that you stood up against.
Right. The bipartisanship is you managed to sink what the president of your party wanted to do and forced to compromise, so you can be the queen of compromise, because he didn't have quite the number of votes he needed because you wouldn't help him.
All right. Speaking of the president, let's pivot and talk about the State of the Union this week. And I don't want to go over the specifics of the State of the Union. State of the Unions are what they are. They're laundry lists of things that likely won't get accomplished, but but all presidents do it. Yeah. And it's interesting from a perspective to see where, as far as to see where the president's priorities are. Yeah. What are they talking about? What are they trying to move forward? Even if it's not going to be accomplished, it's important to know what their thinking is. But given all the noise around and performative political theater that surrounds this State of the Union speech anymore, do we even need this anymore? Should we be in a post-State of the Union world, or just go back to the time when the chief executives just sent a letter to Congress? Yeah.
It seems like it is, in a lot of ways, a relic of a time when communication was slower and more limited than it is now. Yeah. He's the president, whoever the president is not getting up there and telling them anything they don't know.
And he's not persuading people in that chamber.
No.
It's a speech for a larger audience, and I get that. But, the decorum is gone.
Yes.
Since was it Senator Wilson from South Carolina, yelled out, "You lied." Remember, that was a big, massive story the next day.
Yes.
I mean, that's a drop in the bucket to last night.
Yes, you've got people playing dress up with their MAGA hats. Yeah. And you've got people making statements with the guests they invite. Mm-hmm. And it's just gotten to be a big, silly, performative thing.
Yeah, and I just wonder why keep it going at this point. I mean, again, the decorum. I mean, we've seen in the past. We've seen Speaker Pelosi tear up the the Trump speech. And then last night, Speaker Johnson with making his weird facial expressions.
Yeah.
I just don't know if it's necessary anymore. Send a letter.
No. And this year, I mean, the entire purpose of it was, let's see how Biden does.
Yeah.
Because one side had set it up as, he's going to have to stop and take a nap.
Yeah.
No, he did fine.
Yeah, he did fine with
energy,
that.
So now that side is saying, well, he must have been on something.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
No,
I mean, other than mispronouncing Lincoln Riley's name and referring to the USC football coach, Lincoln Riley. I mean, he did fine in that regard.
Yes,
on what I'm calling the style points of the whole thing. He was fine with that. And speaking of style points, let's talk about the Republican response, man. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that was. I'm still trying to digest it. And hopefully, if you're listening to this, I'm sure you've probably seen some clips on that. What were your thoughts when you first saw that? And were you watching it live, or were you like me, getting text messages from people and like going, "What the hell's going on?"
I suddenly Twitter was blowing up and everything else was blowing up. So I did not see it live. I saw it later, and it lived up to the billing. It was weird. It was peculiar, and I mean, just from the starting point of, don't put her in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Just don't put her in the kitchen. Put her in the living room. Put her in an office. Put her somewhere other than the kitchen to deliver it. And the delivery was, I keep seeing variations of like bad high school drama club stuff. And that's what it was. It was, here I'm giddy and happy, and now I'm going to cry because I'm talking about something sad. And it was peculiar. It was just odd. And a lot of people saying they kept waiting for her to stop and yell live from New York Saturday night.
Yeah, no, and I see that a lot. And I guess my question for those folks is like, how do you satirize that?
I don't.
That would have been something. That would have been a performance like that. Would have been a cold open in Saturday Night Live in years past. But like, how do you satirize that?
That reminds me of a few years ago. They did a Sarah Palin sketch.
Yeah.
Where the joke was what Sarah Palin was saying during the speech, but it was a verbatim of the speech. They didn't actually write a speech satirizing Sarah Palin. They had someone.
And that's probably what should be done this week.
Yes.
I don't know if SNL's on this week, but I never know when they're on.
But yeah, I mean, they're not going to make it any weirder than it was.
No.
It was weird. And noticeably, I guess, on Twitter, if you look at her Twitter account, this was a big political deal for her. This, giving the State of the Union rebuttal for someone who wasn't particularly well known. I guess she's a rising.
She's a first term senator,
but she certainly is not a national figure. She's not well known. So the ability to do this on a national scale is a pretty big deal for her. And they are not tweeting out clips of it. What they are doing is tweeting out quotes, stills of her with quotes from the speech. Which
toothpaste is out of the tube, man.
Yeah, I get it. She looked ridiculous. I mean, she sounded ridiculous. But oof.
That was a tough one.
Yeah.
That was a tough one. All right, man. Well, I think that's it for this week, man. Other than that, any new shows you're watching? I'm looking for something new. I started watching Regime, and there's like an episode of that out. That's pretty damn good. The first episode was pretty damn good.
Good. No, you know what? This time of year, we've got the NBA League Pass, so I'm just watching basketball. If I have the TV on in the evening, it's almost invariably a basketball game.
Yeah.
Suns are doing well, but if it's not, I'm a Blazers fan, watch a lot of Blazers, but whatever's on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and I got to admit, too, I was kind of I've watched every episode of the Patriots documentary Dynasty.
Yeah.
Man.
Good.
Man. Aaron Hernandez episode. Oof.
A lot to work with there.
Woo. Boy. And like I don't know, the Coach Belichick is really on. He's like defensive throughout the first 4 or 5 episodes. All he is kind of defensive.
One weird thing about, and I haven't seen the doc, but the sort of tough upbringing of Aaron Hernandez. Now he came from a rough area.
Yeah.
Bristol, Connecticut.
Bristol, baby.
I Do you think that is the wrong spot?
I've not spent a lot of time in Bristol, man. Only thing I know about Bristol, isn't that the home of ESPN?
Yeah. Yeah, and I heard an ESPN person talking about it last night saying, like, was he from the wrong side of the tracks in Bristol? I didn't realize we had tracks in Bristol.
Yeah, like was what? Like, you know, it was like Dan Patrick. Did he have a gang?
I don't know.
Keith Olbermann have a gang back in the day, you know?
Yeah.
I didn't understand.
I mean, I know people who have worked for ESPN universally hate Bristol.
Yeah.
But I didn't think it was because they were terrified of like the violence and gang activity. I think they just sort of viewed it as
I suppose like, you know, tough times can be found anywhere. So
probably, yeah. Yeah. Even at the Worldwide Leader or just outside the Worldwide Leader's doors.
Yeah, you'll have to give me your password for your NBA pass. Joking. I'm joking.
Okay. Let's make sure Adam Silver isn't listening.
I know. I'd hate to be the wrong side of the Sith Lord of the NBA.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Good.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us this week, and be sure to join us next week. And who knows what the hell Colin and I will be talking about next week.
Yeah, see you then.
Thanks for listening. You can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, the Google Store, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. See you next time.